happens in seconds, Debbie. It was incredible. So I'm watching this dog and just ready to go. And an officer has just been shot. Again, I just wanted to know, like, at what point do you send in the dog?
Let's get Detective Greg Wilking of the Salt Lake City Police Department live on the show with us. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, you heard the setup here. We just went, play by play through that officer-involved shooting. And Dave's concern is, why wasn't the canine sent in to deal with the suspect?
Right. Well, what you want to do is you want to think of those canines as officers, and we would never release a canine into a situation where there's an armed subject. It just isn't a smart thing, an acceptable thing to do. We want to preserve life, and sometimes the canines are a good way in preserving life. But in a situation where you're sending a dog in on an armed subject, that has the potential to go bad for that canine.
Yeah.
And we just wouldn't do it.
I was watching that, and it is a terrible situation. I mean, this is a crowded apartment, gunfight, bullets spraying everywhere. But what really stood out to me was the officers are having to peek through this relatively small window, extremely dangerous, and the officer has just been shot. I mean, I love the dogs as well, but at the same point, isn't that the idea, is that they are there to protect their human officers?
They are, but they're not there to take the bullet for an officer. They're there to make situations less dangerous for officers, and we're not there to sacrifice them ahead of us. We're not going to put them in right in the path of danger. When we use the canines, we're often using them on subjects that are non-compliant, that might be hiding from us. We don't necessarily know the situation, whether they're armed or not. But when we know that the person is armed, we're not going to send that canine in on them.
Detective Greg Wilking on the line with us from the Salt Lake City Police Department, talking about an officer-involved shooting. There was a canine on scene, but he was not sent in to deal with the suspect who was firing, which had Dave wondering why not. So we're getting some answers here. Detective, I did reach out to a couple of former canine officers, and I just polled them, and they kind of are all saying the same thing that you are, is that dogs are not always helpful in situations that have gone active as this one did, and that in some cases the dog may even confuse an officer for the suspect because of all the chaos. Is that the case as well?
Yeah. The canines have a very specific application, and some applications are better than others. When it's an active scene like that, somebody's shooting, then that's probably not the appropriate time. Now, if somebody's fleeing and trying to get away, and they're not actively shooting, or we don't know that they have a weapon, that might be a case for deployment. There have been times when the canines mistake an officer for a bad guy and latch on. That's unfortunate, but we know that's part of the dangers of the job.
Yeah.
And working around the canines, they are very well trained, but at the same time, they don't necessarily differentiate when they're in that excited state, and they may latch on to one of us. So.
Yeah, and in fact, in that video, you could actually see a couple times when the handler had to really hold back the canine as he kind of lunged at the officers, because they had their arms, they had the gun drawn, they were pointing out, and you could see he's like, oh, arm and gun, that's bad, right? And you could see him kind of nip at it. That makes a lot of sense the way you described that. So Detective Greg Wilking, thank you so much. It was really curious for me. I thought it was fascinating, and fortunately everyone seems to be doing fine. Oh, just really quick, how's the officer doing?
He's doing well. He is going to face a long recovery, but he has the support of the department, and we hope to see him back when he's ready to come back.
Well, send him our well wishes as well. Detective Wilking, thank you so much for jumping on the line with us today.